How's it going, everybody? Hope everyone's having a good day today. This is the podcast number 3. We have our third guest on today. Podcast Sleepless in Cabaret. We have an amazing guy on. We were just chatting a few minutes before we started and press record. He's an exceptional person. Can't wait to hear his story. And his name is Ciaran. I'm going to pass Ciaran on now to just, talk a bit about his background. What does he do? So, Ciaran, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, lads. I'm really excited to chat to you. I think this initiative that you have is really cool. So fully in support of what you're doing. My name's Ciaran. My official title, I suppose, is Professor of Exercise Science at the University of South Carolina. And I'm also the director of an exercise oncology research lab where we look at how we can use exercise nutrition for people with cancer during and after their treatments to manage side effects and get them through treatment and get them into better recovery. And then I suppose I also act like a consultant to a variety of different companies who are interested in this space in terms of exercise physiology and health and wellness and serve on some medical advisory boards there. So jack of all trades, I suppose.
Very specific trades, Ciaran.
Yeah.
I'd imagine you need a bit of knowledge to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, they're gonna find me out somehow. it's coming.
So your main day today is teaching, is it? Well, what's it like? What exactly are you teaching? Is it hands-on physical stuff, or is it more the science behind the stuff?
Bit of both. So at a place like the University of South Carolina, the main emphasis of my job is producing research. So it's probably like an 85-15 split in terms of I've got to run my research lab. We've got to investigate different ideas and test them out and publish those results. And then we got to get grants and all the rest of it for those things. And then the other 15 is teaching. So I teach exercise physiology, and it's a combination of the theory and the foundations of it, in addition to lab activities where they learn all the hands-on stuff. So to me, like what my passions are, it's dream job. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. So to be in this level, right, you're in here now, you're actually teaching people and doing the research and basically being a lecturer. I remember, obviously, we played football against each other and stuff like that in Ireland when we were 15, 16, and we were all a bunch of Mongols fighting all the time and doing stupid shit. Yeah. So in that period, I was absolutely horrendous in school, had no interest in it. I wanted to be out playing football or doing whatever I could be doing. When you were in when you were in Ireland and you were in secondary school and stuff like that, were you a good student then? Did you like study? Were you getting good results? Or did it come when you kind of put the head down in college in America, or what stage did that happen?
Yeah, well, no was the answer. Very much like yourself. Like, I think a lot of us who had delusions of being professional, all we cared about was football. And to be honest with you, like some of my passion about teaching comes from how poor our education system was, where I went to secondary school. Just shot myself in the foot there. High school.
You forgot about us already.
Yeah. Man, I remember being like 13, 14, 15 and knowing that these people weren't good teachers. Like I was like, there's no way, like I still had a lot of maturing to do, but there's no way that from a pedagogy perspective that's the way to teach a lot of us. I'm sure you were similar, where like putting a group of lads in a room together and then testing them based on intelligence and putting the worst of the worst in a room together and then having them go through school. Disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, I remember, it's mad here. Like I remember stupid things going on. Like you're in a group and you just talk or something. Like I don't think necessarily I was a bad student. I just had no interest in the subject matters at the time. You know what I mean? The subject didn't matter to me. I'll be talking to my mate sitting beside me about football, and then he'd be kicked out of a class and sent to a principal and stuff like that. I remember one time a principal said to me, you're going nowhere. He said, you're probably hanging around street corners in the when you leave school. Like, do you know what I mean? I was like, hanging around street corners. Like, what do you think this is, LA? Like, I'm selling drugs or something. Like, do you know what I mean? I was like, man, when I leave here, I'm playing football with my mates. Like, I'm not doing stupid shit. Like, but the subject matters just didn't interest me. And I found when I went to do sports science down in Closh, like, I would, like, when I was in school, I missed the second half every day for 3 years, never went in, missed probably 1 or 2 days a week. In that whole year, I missed 2 days, and I loved it. And I loved learning about the stuff. And every assignment I had I was the first one to hand it in. So was that the same for you when you hit a point that really interested you and the teachers maybe gave you a little bit more freedom to do it yourself, that you found it was a little bit, like, you worked a little bit harder then, or?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, like coming back to my point, like I was lumped into that class that was deemed the wasters. So from the age of 12 going into secondary school, you're just already have a target on your back of like, this is the class that we're not really going to sweat. And then like we loved it at the time, but we spent 2 years watching Football Factory. Do you know what I mean? Like people putting on videos just to keep us quiet instead of actually. Now I'm not like, I know they've got a hard time dealing with a load of lads like that, but my home life, I'm being told I'm a waster. Then I'm going to school and being told I'm a waster. And if you repeat that day in, day out for years, you start to go, do you know what? I'm a waster. If you're telling me I haven't got a future, why should I bother trying for the future? So I did get involved in all that stuff in the usual messing around with all sorts. And I started to get distracted by that instead of me football. And it was like my best mate, Ciaran Hughes, his dad was like a dad to me. He was the one who was kind of, we were on the edge of getting involved in a lot of stuff. And he was the one of like, listen, football is your way out. Like whether it's college or something else, like this is the thing that's going to keep you on the straight and narrow. So he kind of used their passion for football to keep us in line a bit. But like, to me, like I didn't have a good experience in secondary school. Like I failed me leaving cert. And the only reason I got over to the States was that I did a course in Colossus Eden and Finglas called Association Football. And man, this course changes lives. Like the lads who are in this course, it's like pretty much like last chance you for lads playing football in Ireland. So the whole course is designed for lads and girls who, haven't done well or, still passionate about football and all the rest of it. And we go into Finglas every single day and just train all day, every day. They teach us how to email coaches over in the States. They made us sit SATs. And it was the first time a lot of us would have had any sort of discipline or structure in our lives. So like up until 17, you're all over the place doing whatever you want. And especially, like getting a card and you have all the freedom in the world. So when I was growing up, dad wasn't around as much, angry kid, all that type of stuff. And I basically thought I owned the world. Like I was trying to see what I could get away with. And that experience at Ida was foundational and kind of going, listen, you've got something here, like you can use it. Now, I was never going to be like a pro, and I still probably had delusions at that time, but there was also some sort of direction for lads like us who are still 18, 19, trying to like do something with their lives, but lost. And that was the first time I was exposed to sports science as well, where it was like, geez, this is cool. But then went over to so that course, essentially, you email a load of coaches in the States and you send them video and you tell them what you're about. And then we went over to Memphis that year and you play in a tournament and you get all these coaches to come watch you play with the hopes that you get a scholarship away. So it's mad how it works out. Like there's 100 people start the course and then 40 end up going to Memphis about 9 months later. And then X amount of people of those end up getting scholarships. So at the time, a lot of us were desperate of like, I'll take whatever. If you're going to pay me to go to college, like, hands up. Yeah, because the college system in America isn't the way it is at home, where a home is vocational and you've got to apply for a certain amount of points to get a course. America has 2 years of gen ed. So as long as you meet minimum requisites of grades, you can get in. And then you get 2 years of gen ed of like, explore all these different career options. And then your second 2 years is right. You picked one, go for it. So it's a really good way in exposing you to a lot of different fields without you having to enroll in a course. And then if you don't like the course, you got to drop out and re-enroll in a different course. Yeah. And that gets to be a pain in the arse for a lot of Irish people where they're like, I'm not doing this over going back on the CA and all that type of stuff. Yeah, so
they probably hit a certain age then they're like, oh, fuck, it's too late now. And then they just go and get a job that they have no interest in.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to do it. What was the first kind of ones you done? Like, did you have to pick like 3 or 4 subjects that you might have a main interest in? Like, what was the first kind of ones you picked there?
They want you to have a foundation of general knowledge. So this is like where it fell apart for me a second time.
Yeah.
So I moved over to Kentucky. So from Swords, Dublin's a big city. Moved over to rural Kentucky where there's 40,000 people in the town. There's 700 kids at the college. There's not a single international person there. I'm rocking up in like skinny jeans, deep V-neck. Remember when we had the chain or the crosses and all that stuff, like slicked hair. And these lads are non-ironically wearing cowboy boots and flannel and hats and everything. Like I was what, 18 at the time. It was like a different world. And this was before Skype, all sorts of that. I remember getting on the plane and then halfway over realizing that like it wasn't on the holiday. It was literally moving to another country and just being like, what am I after fucking doing here?
I'd say that was a scary moment as well, like going to do that, like and be in the middle of nowhere. Like it's probably a little bit easier if you go to the big places like New York where you can meet people you know, or people probably even have family members near enough. You're in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Exactly. Like where I live now, Charlotte, North Carolina is about an hour up the road. And there is maybe 100 to 150 Irish people living there in an Irish community. They have a Gaelic club. So I play Gaelic with Charlotte. And if I had moved over and had a community like that at 18, it would have been a lot easier. Whereas, like you said, I'm in the middle of Kentucky, no phone, no car, don't know anyone, like walking back and forth from college, living in like no idea what's going on. And I also, because I failed me leaving cert, I couldn't play my first year. So I had to get me grades up in college to play my second year. So again, coming back to the way we played football, like, especially in Dublin, like you have to be tough. You know what I mean? Like you can't get away with not. But I go over to rural Kentucky and I'm like smashing lads in training and all sorts. And they're like, who is this fella? Like, you know what I mean? Like Champions League final every day.
You were a big Bill back then, man. I remember I fucking was playing against you, playing up front, and you were playing centre back when we were 16. And you were a fucking big build. Probably the only person in the league that had ever lifted a weight at that point.
Yeah. I know, man. Like 2006, I was in the back garden doing squats and everything.
Yeah, that's mad, man. I remember you were a fucking big build, man.
Yeah, so I literally taken that energy into to rural Kentucky. Now, before I went, I was playing with Sport and Fingal and got offered a contract to stay on with them. Now, again, like I was an average footballer. I probably wouldn't have had a career in the Aircom League. But at the time at 18, I'm comparing 6 months ago, I got offered a pro contract. And now I'm in the middle of Kentucky at a place like Kentucky Wesleyan where I was. They only had enough scholarship to offer one or two international lads full rides, meaning that they paid for their school. So because they only had enough money, then they had 18 lads from local Kentucky. They were poison, absolute poison. So it's me and like a Welsh lad or something playing with all these Americans going like, what are we doing here? So I couldn't play with the team, meaning I also couldn't travel. So they would travel all over the country, be gone for weekends. And this is my first 2 weeks in the country, just being like, not only do I not have phone, car, friends, anything, the team doesn't like me because I'm smashing half of them. And then they're going away for the weekend. So I'm not really getting to know them. So it was a brutal experience initially, just trying to like get on my feet with everything. And on top of that, coming back to your question about grades or classes, the gen eds they want us to take is like American history, French, English writing, like all this type of stuff. And I was just like 8 o'clock in the morning learning French from a Kentucky American girl. It's a fucking nightmare. So it was a very, very tough transition.
So the first 2 years is like that. And then after that, then you can go where I'm interested in sports, and you ended up doing kinesiology. Was it that at that point or was that later?
Yeah. So I spun around a few different, like I was interested in business, and then I was interested in psychology. I was mad. There was an unbelievable philosophy professor that I just could not get enough of. Like this isn't like your lads down the pub being philosophers. This is like a trained philosophy professor teaching you how, like, really challenge you on your beliefs and stuff. It was incredible. So I was leaning that way for a bit, but all the stuff that I just spoke about, it was really, really hard for me being on my own in a country with no support. And on top of that, like very much like Ciaran Smiley's dad was the only main like spine in my life growing up. When I moved to Kentucky, I took him away. So no one knows me. And at a place like Kentucky, like especially with us Dublin lads, like you're coming in with the swagger kind of thing, like, and they don't know how to handle that. So they're like, this fella loves it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was also very hard to break down those walls. No one really like took an interest in me. So, and this is coming back to what we were talking about drinking before. I'm going over there, like, you know, drinking to excess, smashing windows, doing all the stuff that we would do growing up.
Yeah.
And they're like, you will get arrested and kicked out of the country. Like, you know what I mean? So got in a lot of trouble with all that stuff. And so got through the first semester all right. And then I put on freshman 65. Like I went from 180 pounds to I think 225 at my biggest. And I was a chunk, like. So the
like bad way or like
oh yeah. There was very little was muscle.
eating and drinking.
Yeah. So my coach goes, listen, you're too heavy to play. Like you're getting slow and all the rest of it. Lose the weight. So this was January, and at a place like Wesleyan, we had no strength and conditioning coach, no registered dietitian, no support. So he just said, see you in 8 months, lose the weight. And I have a real addictive personality. So I just did 2-a-days every day. I'm now go back almost 15 years now in terms of the quality of the information was on the internet. It was just like
terrible
bodybuilding forums, you know what I mean? And like all sorts of stuff. So took all of that to excess, was way under eating. So I went from 225 down to 160 coming in preseason. Now I walk around now at 200. So 160 is very, very light for me.
Yeah.
And it turns out I was malnourished basically from the overtraining, under eating. Had worked my way up to become captain of the team, was coming back in preseason. And there was a lot of conversation about how, like me coming back and all the rest of it, we were going to do well. The other thing about Wesleyan is that it's a private college. So there's a couple of us athletes who would have been brought over on scholarship from wherever, from working class backgrounds. And then we're going to school with legally blonde type people. You know what I mean? Like they've got brand new SUVs, brand new Blackberries, and all the clothes they want. Their parents are paying their rent, their phone bill, everything, not a care in the world. And it's very hard to be the only fella in that environment wearing penny shorts and a tank top around all these people with like Gucci and all that stuff. So this is where I not having the structure really fucked with me a bit. So I was a thieving little bastard when I was growing up, and I just fell back into that routine. So I started shoplifting. So came back in the summer, and essentially what I do is like go into a Macy's or whatever, the usual stuff, go into a dressing room, put on, like bring in 2 t-shirts, put on 1 t-shirt and walk back out with the other one or whatever. Yeah. I looked like Joey O' Friends, you know, when he started wearing Chandler's clothes. So on top of this, I was 19 years old. I was the captain, and I recruited 2 or 3, 4 of the freshmen with me who would have been like 16, 17 to come around with me. So we would drive to different malls and get up to all that stuff. And instead of nailing us once, they got the reg of the car. So they just tracked us for like a month, and we're just watching what was happening. So then one day, this mall cop had his big break. We were in Macy's, and your man caught us on the security camera. And he was like, look, he's our nailed here. Like, after seeing you all, put us in the back room. And then he went to go and call the police. And when he left, I was like, lads, if I get done here, like I'm kicked out of college and kicked out of the country, like I'm done for. And whatever happened in the panic, they were like, yes, we'll tell him you weren't involved. So they did that. He came back and he was like, he wasn't involved. So he let me go. I've never ran as fast in my life away from that place, man. Like those flip-flops coming off you and everything. But this was 2 days in preseason. So we had trained in the morning, gone off and done that. And then we had to come back in the evening. And we came back in the evening. I rocked up, and then there's 4 lads not there off the team. And the coach was like, where are the lads? And we had to kind of fess up. And long story short, because basically they accumulated the estimated value of all the trips over time. So they said, whatever, it's about 10 grand. And then they divided it up by every person. So it would have been like 2,500 a piece or something like that. Because they were all 17, they got tried as juniors, and it was a misdemeanor, or what do you call it, juvenile. It was a misdemeanor. So I would have been tried as an adult and have a felony, kicked out of school, kicked out of the country and banned for however long. And it was the exact same thing. Like there's a lot of people who were there at the time. No one looked at that and went, scared kid. No one looked at that and went, he's acting out. Everyone just said, he's a wanker, like get him out of here. Yeah. So yeah, like the president of the college tried to kick me out and all sorts, and it was dragged on for a while, and I had to do like 800 hours of community service. Like I built half the college before I could play again. And then while that's going on, I'm still overtraining, under eating, all the rest of it. So came back on the team, and 2 games into the season, landed off a header, broke my foot. I was out for the season. So at this point, I'm going like 2 years ago, signing pro for in Dublin. Now I'm in Kentucky playing for this team that is useless. Don't really have many friends. The college doesn't want me here. I can't even play football. It was a massive, massive impact on my mental health. And also being injured, I was petrified of putting on the weight again. So essentially, that kind of spiraled out of control, and I ended up becoming bulimic. So just petrified of putting on the weight. I can't really say that it was a specific point where I was like, going to be bulimic. Just something that festered over time, where I started to, every time I would have a big meal, I would binge and purge. And I think like when we were playing in America, when we were playing games, after the game, you go to like Olive Garden, have like endless pasta bowls and do buffets and all that. The lads could get away with it because they were playing. But again, I'd stuff my face and go, I'm going to put back on weight and get back up to 25. And that's kind of what started it. It just completely spiraled out of control. And it was just at the point again, 08, 09, the conversations around mental health weren't there. The awareness to spot signs of it weren't there. And my behavior got worse and worse, to where it wasn't just me eating and purging in me gaff. It was like I stopped going out, and then it wasn't just one meal, it was every single meal. And then it got to the point where I'm taking laxatives. I won't shower because I don't want to look at myself in the mirror, like all sorts of stuff. And it got to the point where kind of towards the end of my sophomore year, tried to end my life. So overdosed on a rake of drink and drugs, and ended up in hospital. And there was a lad over from Dublin. He's actually a really good mate to this day, who was trying to come over and play. And he only kind of stuck his semester because he saw what it was like. But you know, when you say to someone in Ireland, like, I got my stomach pumped, and they kind of laugh it off. You know what I mean? Like, that's how messed up our relationship with drink is.
That happened to loads of people when you were fucking teenagers. Like, it was kind of
yeah.
normal.
So I woke up assuming it was like that. And I was like, stomach pumped or whatever. And he, like, this lad's from Ballymun, like, he's seen a lot, and he was like in tears. And he was like, man, you were close to dying. Like, the stuff
Wasn't
that
Sean
they had to
Hayden,
do. No, it was Stephen Flynn. Flinner.
Oh, ginger lad.
Yeah. So that's just kind of the mindset. I was just spiraling out of control. And that Christmas was when my ma got diagnosed with breast cancer. So again, I couldn't afford to come home. I was staying in dorms in the States on my own for 2 weeks. No phone, no nothing, just spending Christmas on my own.
And your own mental health was already at a fucking all-time low, probably. Yeah.
And I think, like, again, going back to the resources that were out there, like, especially with the bulimia, I would literally go to sleep. I'd stay up till like 3 or 4 in the morning, looking at pictures of burgers and pizza and all the rest of it. Fall asleep, wake up at 11, walk to a pizza place, eat the whole thing, get sick, and just repeat that all day, every day on my own. Like,
fucking hell.
So then my ma called me, and she said she was getting out of surgery for breast cancer. She was going through all the rest of it. And again, it's something like, I'm 19, no idea how to emotionally handle that. Can't go home, so can't do anything about it. I'm just left to my own thoughts. So coming into the second year, this is a way long story for your question. But
this is better. Actually, I want to know more about this than my original question now. I never knew any of this, man. I never knew any of this.
Yeah. Coming into the sophomore or the spring semester, so after Christmas, spring break's big in America. So under the guise of I'm losing weight for spring break, I just kept going. So at my lowest, again, I'm 220 now. I was at 225. I think I got down to 154. So it was literally just like skeleton on me.
And you're 220 now, just to point out, you're 220 now lean. You're always...
I'm not overweight. I'm not overweight. No, I'm about 205 now. Yeah.
So like for you to take that, what's it, maybe 50 pounds off this frame that you have now is a lot.
Yeah. Which is, again, like, it's part of what drove me into this field. And just like so much things in my life that I've done is because we didn't have growing up. So like a lot of us never had father figures. A lot of us didn't have teachers that cared about them. And a lot of us didn't have resources to teach them how to train and eat properly. In addition to being aware of the dangers with men, especially around body image and training and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, all the rest of it, stop going out. And that was one of the first times in my life, right? So growing up, I'm not necessarily proud of the person I was, like 14 to 18-ish, like loved myself, full of myself. I had a load of people who knew me, but very few friends. So like one of the most popular people around, but very few friends. There was 200 people at my going away party, and I keep in touch with 2 of them now.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how I lived my life a lot. Like as long as everyone knew me and I was this life of the party, sweet. But then when I started to go through bulimia, like especially when I stopped going out, the phone calls stopped coming, and everyone's like, "Nah, he's not fun anymore. He won't eat or he won't drink or whatever." And there was
that's
one
when you
lad,
find out where your real friends are.
exactly. And it also for me, I've always had kind of a darkness to me, based on how I grew up and all the rest of it. But I didn't have the emotional awareness to be able to access that in a way that I could use to help me, instead of just lashing out because I was an angry kid kind of thing.
Yeah.
So all the while this is going on, I was training with one fella, Ben Nitch, who turned out to be best mate. We were training with each other every day. And he was kind of, unbeknownst to me, he was kind of noticing all this. And then as this was going on, I was getting more brave. So instead of just doing it in my gaff, I'd go out for a meal with people and then disappear after the meal for half an hour, come back, eyes are bloodshot, fingers are smelling of vomit and all the rest of it, and just try and play it off. And he was one of the few that was actually noticing that. So this all kind of came to pass when we went on spring break. I was doing it more and more often, and he was kind of watching it, and we were about to go out one night, and he was like, man, like, what's happening? Like, I saw you at lunch, like, and I was like, no, you're all right. No, it wasn't that. And I just had something caught me throat. And he was like, no, like, sit down. Like, what's happening? And he wouldn't leave until I told him. And then it was just like floods of everything, of just like how I felt, what I was doing. Like, and if he saved my life. Like, if he didn't do that for me, I wouldn't be alive, because that's the direction I was going. In addition to,
mental, man,
when it wasn't just like, tell me what's going on. He trained with me, continued to train with me every single day after that. And he would eat with me and stay with me after I ate to make sure that I didn't do it. And we talked through all of this stuff around my relationship to my body, my relationship with my own self-worth, and all these other things. And again, it was the first time that I realized, like, one, this is friendship, but two, being able to access this type of emotional intelligence or awareness and actually dig into my feelings and talk to them, especially with another man, like, was life-changing. So that, all of that kind of culminated in me going, I'm in college in America, pissing away an opportunity that very few lads where we come from get the opportunity to have. Like, so much of us are wrote off, and then we don't get a second chance. I'm after getting 2, 3, 4 chances now, and I'm still pissing it away. So it was kind of like with him helping me out and what happened to my ma, I was like, I need to do something here. I need to, like, change everything. And there was another part of that where at the college I was at, there was also no sports science major at the time. So it just so happened that there's a fella, Jason Crandall, came in as a teacher late, and he'd started a whole new track for us. And the best thing about him was that he worked outside academia for like 10 years. He was like, he got his PhD in exercise physiology, and then he went and worked at his dad's carpet business and basically owned a business. So when he came back, he was able to see through a lot of the bullshit of academics that we see, but we don't have a voice for. Yes. So he was one of the first ones who actually talked to me as a person and go, like, who are you and what are you about? And why are people telling me these things about you? And actually took time to invest in me. So another turning point for me was, like, so many of us act out because we're angry or scared or confused, or we don't know how to handle our emotions. And very few people take the time to understand what's going on. And for him, a professor, to sit down with me and go, what's going on? Talk to me about your life, and actually invest in me. He got me a job working at his brother's restaurant, cash in hand. He found out about me ma, and he flew me out to it. The American College of Sports Medicine is one of the biggest conferences in the world for what we do. He flew me out to that with him out to Colorado to see what that conference was like and learn about research. And then he brought that back and helped me start a cancer rehab clinic in Kentucky, based off of all that. So this is like some dude I've never met before, has gotten to know me and then personally invested so much of his time and energy into me. And that's all I've ever needed in my life. Like, I went around with middle fingers to the world because I was like, well, if no one's going to love me, fuck everyone. And all I needed was people to see through that kind of mask and go, no, there's something in there and you're actually a sweet person. Like, I'll help you dissolve some of that. So it was sorry, go on.
So those two lads, between literally a friend and a lecturer or teacher or whatever it was, those two lads just became the anchors that dragged you from that place to this place.
Yeah.
So if you had continued to have the same bad influences around you, lads just going, oh, let's go for a drink, and nobody ever sat down with you and went like, Ciaran, what's going on here? Let's talk about this. You probably never would have changed, would have went down an even worse road.
Yeah. And it's funny, what's changed now is that I'm so, like, if we wanted to meet up and have a coffee and talk about this, I could be fully open about it. Whereas one of the challenges I face when we talk about, I lived in America for 10 years and then I moved to Australia. I would chat to some lads in Australia and it would only be after 7 points that they tell me something, and then they wouldn't follow up with it. So I'd be like, right, we just had this really deep conversation here, man. Like, there's something going on. Like, are you all right? No, it's just a drink. I was like, hold on, it's not. You know what I mean? Like, you've needed 7 drinks to be able to lower those walls or whatever. But let's not just put that aside and laugh it off of like, oh, I was talking nonsense. Like,
it's a hard thing in Ireland, isn't it? A lot of people, Irish people, they're not ready to face their problems, and they're masking it with drink and drugs. And I've had, like, you know, people that, you know, and you're like, maybe you shouldn't be doing coke every weekend. And they when they're younger, they think you're a prick. Like, this guy's a prick. But maybe later down the line, they come back and go, I understand now, you were trying to help me or whatever. But a lot of the time they don't see it and they just think you're a wanker for trying to help them. And they're continuing to hide and they're continuing to do it. And some people, luckily for you, you had it somewhere in your own brain to go, I'm going to listen, I'm going to change, I'm going to listen to these guys. And then you had the support systems there. But here, like, I talk a lot about this stuff, and I find, like, in the last year and a half since I've done that, or talked about mental health and trying to help people and go against certain things that are going on in the fitness industry that are in my thoughts in negative and making people worse, I've become less and less popular. People don't want to listen to me anymore. They don't want to listen to my Instagram and stuff like that. And it's not because they don't like me or they don't like the subject matter. They're just not ready to face it. In their head, they'd rather run away from it. They're going to take the drink and the drugs and they're going to run away from it. If they were in an environment like you are, where it's not as popular and you're the only person doing it, you can't hide. It becomes like, oh, maybe I need to, you know, seek help, or maybe I'm ready and I can kind of progress in my life a little bit faster, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. Like, one of the hardest things for me, so between the age of 24 and 29, I didn't go home. So for 5 years, I was in America without any Irish people. So I'd go up and visit a couple of my good mates in Toronto every now and again. But beyond that, I wasn't exposed to seeing lads out 3 days a week, doing whatever. So when I came home at 29, I naively assumed that people were kind of like starting to kind of do different things in their life and trying to, you know, I don't know, get away from some of that. And it hit me like a ton of bricks for exactly the reason that you're saying. So I'm kind of coming home back into this environment that I haven't seen since I was a young fella and going, lads, have you thought about, like, is this the right thing? And I think trying to do that is really difficult because you don't want to come across as I'm better than you. You don't want to come across as like judgmental. The only perspective I've ever taken is like, I've lived that life and it was terrible for me. I have gone through how hard it is to break away from that. I'm trying to give you perspective on how you can do that. And oftentimes that's taken of, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
But I see this about you, like, you're not perfect. And it's like, no, like, that's not it. Like, I can be an imperfect person and have lots of things about me that I'm working on. That's a separate issue from I'm trying to help you with this specific thing. And I've lost a lot of friends I've lost probably some of my closest friends that I had growing up because I've kind of had that perspective. And it's really, really hard to do that with people that you have such history with. Like my girlfriend here, I had a really good friend that I went home with, and we would have been like best mates, and we just kind of went like this in terms of direction, and it came to a head where we had a lot of these conversations, And man, it was like a breakup, like
Yeah.
trying to recover from that, the loss of that friendship and all the memories that we had together, because of how we've kind of landed. It's a really, really hard thing to do. And also, I don't know if you felt this way, but like you start to second guess yourself and like, wait, am I too hard? Like, should I not? Like, I don't want to overstep. You know what I mean?
You know
like,
what
it's
it
a very
boils
difficult
down
thing
to for me. The only reason you're having that conversation with him is because he's your best friend and you care about him at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? You're not having that conversation with the average Joe that you met on a night out once. Like, do you know what I mean? You're having that conversation because you genuinely care about him and you want to help him, but he just doesn't see it at that moment. It might be 10 years time when he'll see it and he'll come back and you're probably looking going, you know what? This guy is working in a job that he doesn't like, or, you know, he's gone down a path that he doesn't like. And he's masking that by doing the drink and drugs, when I know that he was probably he might have been smarter than me when we were younger, and he's capable of so much more. And this is what I'm doing. And I know if he put his mind to it, he could be fucking doing better than me or the same as or whatever. But he's not, and he's not happy. And that's what you're trying to do. So I think when you know deep down that you have their best interest in mind, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. And then eventually, if it might be fucking 10 years or it might be 50 years, some point they're going to look back and they're going to go, do you know what, he actually was trying to help me there. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think one of the things that, sorry, go on, Glenn.
Sorry, Ciaran. It was like one of the scenarios that we had before. Ciaran, I go down to Lee's gym and I train and I do the same workout every single day. And I had no clue what I was doing in the gym. And in reality, what was happening was people were looking at me and saying, like, what's he doing like 3 pull-ups again still? And after time, then Lee just pulled me inside and says, Glenn, what are you doing? He says, you're not going to get anywhere by doing the same routine again. And that was a good friend coming to me and coming to me and telling me the truth. And then he guided me. This is what you should be doing. This is what you should be doing. Where the others, I also consider probably not on the same friendship level as Lee, but at least like come over and say, what are you doing? And it takes that person to come over and say, what are you doing? Like, this is what you should be doing, and showing you the way. And I went from then I went from like 59 kilograms to 73, pure muscle.
That's all we understand, because we're at that level of growth in our lives where we can look at someone and go, I know that when I offer someone this advice, it's because I'm trying to help them. So when a friend comes to me and offers me that advice, I know he's trying to help me. Where some people are just stuck and they're not really ready to change themselves, or they're not ready to face it. And maybe their traumas are different to ours, and maybe they are harder to face. But I think there will always, when you care about someone and you're offering genuine advice, they'll always come around at some point. You know what I mean? Whether it's on their fucking deathbed or what it is, they'll always look back and go, you know what, he was trying to help me there. Like,
yeah, I think what you said there about the traumas being different is really powerful. One of the things I struggle with now is, like, I grew up working class, and for 10 years in the States, like, I'd say the most I made in a year was maybe 15 grand. So just like living rough, trying to, with such blinders on, trying to get to where I wanted to go. And now, like, I live a middle class lifestyle. So I don't have mates anymore who are on the scratch or who are working trades and all the rest of it. And I think that does something to me in that, like, you forget. Like, I forget how hard it is to live in Dublin, to try and save for the gaff while you're working on some building site, working for someone you don't like, and you've got 2 kids and all the rest of it. Like, I think I have to consistently remind myself that, like, I went through a lot to get to where I am, but I'm living comfortable now. And it's not the same because if I don't drink, I have so many other great things going on in my life to fulfill me. I love outdoors. I love going hiking. My career is great. I really get a lot of reward out of it. So I've got these other things that will give me value. But if people are under those pressures of just trying to keep a roof over your head and feed the kids and, you know, maybe have a missus you're not getting on with and all the rest of it, like, that's a lot to deal with. And if you then haven't got to the point of where you maybe have that emotional awareness as well, it's a lot in one thing where maybe their release is just drinking. So it's hard for me to go, stop that right now, versus, like you said, maybe just offering support and hoping that over time, if you keep showing up for them, they'll kind of see you. It's a very hard thing to manage.
You know, a large part of what we're doing now and why we're doing this is because we can give people this information without the bias or judgment that they might feel from us. So there's someone on my Instagram that I'm not friends with, or maybe I trained 5 years ago, or maybe that has followed me and never trained with me. And young lads that want to play football, I want to do whatever, and they'll listen to your story now, which I want to get into a bit in after this, what you're actually doing and where you have gone to and what you've achieved in life. Because when people look at you and go, oh my God, he actually did all that shit, man. He was fucking acting the bollocks like the rest of us, you know, and he went through the mental health issues like the rest of us. And now he's here. That can inspire people. So their friends don't have to have that conversation or push it on them. It could be this video. They could watch this video and go, fuck, man, I can actually change here.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So like coming onto this podcast, I know it's supposed to be more about football. Then you get just these detailed, you know, parts of your life that I'm just like, wow, like absolutely so inspired, and so, you know, very proud of yourself.
We'll try and go through exactly what you are doing, what you have achieved, and what you've done. If we start, because this has kind of evolved around football a little bit, and there could be young lads that watch this, where you reached the height of being involved in sport, where that height was for you was probably when you were with Columbus Crew and you're part of the strength and conditioning team and you're meeting the likes of Drogba and Pirlo and stuff like that. Some lads that might never want to go into the education system or do what you're doing today, but they might want to go into the coaching system. They might want to be part of, they might see a hope of a professional teams in America or England or whatever as part of a coaching system when they don't make it as a footballer, if they don't make it as a footballer. Can you kind of give us a bit of an insight to how that came about?
Yeah, so there's a few things. Like, I'd love to develop some sort of education module for lads like that, and like, here's what you can do in the States and all the rest of it, because I got through college, I did my master's and I did my PhD all for free. Now, these places cost 40 grand a year to go and get your education. So I've got 10 years of that for free. The first 4 years were football. And then when you go to graduate school in the States, especially for sports science, a lot of what you do, you'll either teach classes at the university or you'll do research for the university. And because of that, you'll get tuition paid for. So they cover your tuition, they give you a little bit of a stipend. Now, it's not a lot, like you're broke, but for me, if you're going to give me 10 years of education for free and get a PhD end of it, I'll take that with two hands, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So my undergraduate degree was in health science, which is just general what you'd get in any sort of sport and exercise science degree. And then in the States, there are hundreds of programs that offer a master's in sport and exercise science, where you dig a little bit deeper into what it is to be a strength and conditioning coach or a sports nutritionist and all the rest of it. So that was what my master's was, where we worked at the university and we did a lot of research around how different supplementation protocols work, how we can manipulate recovery modalities, or how we can optimize training for performance. So then went from there up to Ohio State to do my PhD in kinesiology, which is just a different word for exercise science. And that was where, I mean, just like you said, the pinnacle of what I've ever wanted, in terms of, I was working beside Dr. Bill Kramer, who was the founding father of a lot of strength and conditioning work in our field. He worked at Ohio State. We got to work with the world's strongest men every year. So we did all their testing in terms of their physiological outcomes, their body composition. Like, this is like the mountain and all those lads, like 6'7", 400 pounds, 12% body fat, just monster. Like, if you see four of them walking down the hallway together, it's just like, oh my God.
They barely fit.
So I just like, I couldn't believe that these type of opportunities existed. And then the Columbus Crew came in. So Columbus Crew are in Major League Soccer. And I got an opportunity to be a strength and conditioning / sports scientist for them for a year. And my mentor there, Steve Tashin, he came from Everton. So he was a high performance director for Everton in the Premier League for 6 years or whatever. So his standards for sports science were through the roof. Like, in relative context, like, Major League is obviously not as big as Premier League, but the field of strength and conditioning is really big in the States. So the caliber of what we had and what he wanted from us was just unbelievable. So you get to work with athletes every day and start to figure out how to manipulate their training and recovery and all the rest of it, and manage their stress and try and get them prepared for game days. And it was just a really amazing experience, man. Like, every day going in, whatever, 6 in the morning to 4 in the day, working with some of the best athletes you can, trying to get them fitter and better and all the rest of it. And that year we made a run all the way to the cup final. So almost like an FA Cup, Super Bowl. So they play a league and then they get into playoffs and then they play the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Same thing as in MLS. So we went through all the way to the cup final. Unfortunately, we lost, but that experience of having that build up throughout the year was just unbelievable.
Amazing, yeah.
And then
I
you
remember
do
you
like
got to meet some players like Drogba and Pirlo and that, was it?
yeah, and man, like what was insane is that like Drogba was 34, Pirlo 36, Kaká was 35, and they were easily the best players out. Like it was almost like watching like a youth under 15 lad playing with under 12s. Like they would just play with the lads, like bring them over this side of the pitch and then spray it another way. And I got a picture with Kaká and I got a picture with Drogba. And I went to ask Pirlo for a picture and I shit myself. Like I just got so scared. Like I was like, Pirlo, and he looked at me. I was like, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, so man, just being exposed to that stuff was amazing. And then like on the other side of that, as far as career prospects, if you want to be a strength and conditioning coach, there's a lot of different avenues for that. And a lot of the times you end up doing a lot of internships back to back. So you have to show that you can work in different environments, in different sports, and then gradually you're building your profile up to where people would trust you as a head strength and conditioning coach. So you've built up your portfolio of working with different sports and all the rest of it. So a lot of people in strength and conditioning oftentimes spend 4 or 5 years working with different teams for very little money, doing all the stuff, and then they'll eventually get the head coach gig. And for me, like a combination of kind of my own mass background with cancer, and also I was looking at the grind it took to be a strength and conditioning coach. I got in late. So I was 25 when I was doing it. Like a lot of S&C coaches are 21, 22, where they can afford to bounce all over and just do whatever. I was getting to the age where I knew I was going to be 28, graduate with a PhD. And I was like, I don't have it in me after doing 10 years of this, like being broke for something, to spend another 5 or 6 years doing it. Like it's a hard life, strength and conditioning. Like you're in there every single day. And just like the burnout you feel with running a gym, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
With the exception that you don't have any control over your schedule. Like you live for the team.
It's a lot of traveling, probably, is there? Especially America's a big place.
Yeah.
Like you go from one side of America to the other. It's a long travel.
Yeah. And like the allure is I'm going to work in the NFL or NBA and all the rest of it. And I had some opportunities to work with individual athletes. But again, unless you are NFL with the Jets, even if you're NFL with the Jets, like you're not making as much as you would think they would make. Like strength and conditioning and nutrition is consistently undervalued at all levels in all sports. So there's a few lads in collegiate settings that might be making 500 grand. Most lads might be making 60, 70. Even more are probably in the 30, 40 range, which in the States is not a lot of money. Especially
from a point of view, Ciaran, there's probably people here in Ireland that are working in a fucking local shop or in a shitty job or a fucking factory or whatever, and they're probably getting 20 to 25 grand a year when they had a great interest in sport growing up. They loved football, played football, maybe didn't make it, and then went, fuck, I give up on life. I'm 19. And now I've given up on life and I'm going to take this fucking factory job for 40 years.
Yeah.
From their point of view, to go and work and maybe only make $30,000-$40,000, is it a sustainable life that they can go, do you know what? It's I'm doing something I enjoy. I'm not going to be a fucking millionaire off it. I can cover the bills and I can live life and be happy doing something I enjoy. Is there a prospect of that? Like, would that be a livable wage over there? Like,
I really appreciate that perspective. That's exactly what I was talking about with me being over here of just forgetting. Like that lads are in a shop making nothing, serving in central kind of thing. Absolutely. It can be a livable wage. The only reason I offer caution is because in the States, my undergrad class every year is 150 kids, every single one of whom want to be a strength and conditioning coach. And what we're trying to do is not necessarily turn them away from the field, but more help them understand that there's different options you can do with an exercise science degree.
Yeah.
So if you got an exercise science degree, strength and conditioning is a really, I mean, if you love soccer, like talk about it, or sports science, incredible experience. And a really, as is coaching.
Yeah.
But there's also, you could do exercise physiology at Exos, or work for Apple, or work for NASA. You could do athletic training. You could do physical therapy. Like in the States, your exercise science degree is taught as it's a pre-degree. So a lot of, and people here, when they go to med school, they have to do college before they go to med school. So they do pre-med and then they go to med school. So in exercise science here, we do pre-exercise science, and then let's figure out what opportunities exist. So a lot of people during college, you're interning as a strength and conditioning coach. You're going to shadow a physical therapist or an athletic trainer or an exercise physiologist at NASA. And it's more, I think what you're saying, like the passion for soccer, you take that and run with it and do that. But there's also a lot of other opportunities outside that. If your passion is for fitness and soccer, we can open up those avenues. But as far as like strength and conditioning, there's a ton, and even not even as far as America, there's a phenomenal couple of programs in England. Loughborough is one of them, Liverpool is one of them, where if you do sports science in Liverpool, a lot of the, like Liverpool and Everton, when they get their testing, they often use Liverpool Hope University. So you're going over and doing all these physiological tests with the Liverpool players.
Class,
so like there's stuff like that is unbelievable. And I think what gets, I spoke to Klaus to Eid a few years ago about this, like what gets people lost, to your point, is I did family leaving and now I have no options. And it is hard to reconsider all that stuff, but going back as a mature student to get your sports science degree at DCU or DIT or somewhere, that's the first step. It's not, I'm going to do that and then I'm going to look for a personal trainer job or whatever. I think where you're trying to get people to believe in themselves, like, because once lads identify as I play football and I was a footballer, it's so hard to remove that identity of like, you have so much more in you. You don't,
That's what I'm saying about the kind of football thing. It might just aspire them enough to go, I'm going to go and try this. I'm going to do the health science. And then from there, it can maybe open windows, but just keeping that dream until they become mature enough to see the other opportunities. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's the thing. I think exposing them to as much as possible, because if you grew up in Kilbarrack and you haven't really been outside of Ireland, you don't know what exists. And you're looking around you at modeling other people's behavior or modeling other people's careers. And it's like, right, well, why would I go and do 3 years of a sports science degree if I'm going to work in the aqua center that I'm already at or whatever? Like, use that as the opportunity to expose yourself to all these things. And the way I've approached my career is like, why not me? Like, why not have the biggest ambitions I can have? Like, I have ambitions to be that American College of Sports Medicine. I'm going to be the president of that organization. I had ambitions to be the director of my own research lab. I have all these ambitions that it's like, it's part of the chip on my shoulder. I was like, fuck you, no, like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And
I think a lot of lads do have that mentality of kind of being beaten down and not really believing in themselves. And like, well, I failed, me leave, and I'm not good at school. And to your point earlier, you might not have been good at geography or economics in secondary school, but you could be fantastic at coaching or sports science because that stuff speaks to you. And I think it also comes back to trying to give them exposure, because a lot of lads, right, you're 24 working in Centra. How do you start college? Like, what do I do? I don't know. What is it? There's no real resources or support for them to then, like, you get a career guidance counselor in secondary school who's like, fill out your CAO. No. That's it.
Man, the courses they tried to push me into, I remember, I'm looking back now going, why did you think I was ever going to do it? I wouldn't fill them out now. I stopped going to the class. I was like, I'm not going. They used to say to me, like, why you didn't turn up for that class? And I wouldn't even make an excuse. I wouldn't even say I was sick. I'd just go, I didn't go because it's fucking useless, man. Your man's trying to tell me to do shit that I'm never going to do. Like,
yeah. And it turns out you're right, because you haven't used them.
I haven't,
yeah. So I think, like, to your point, I think the biggest avenue for us to try and fill that gap is that bridge of like, here's what's out there, here's what you can do, and here's some first steps. Because it's too early in their career to go, well, should I be in America or England doing strength and conditioning? It's like, just get yourself into a course first.
Yeah, I'm just talking about that will give them the dream, you know what I mean? Just to have a dream, because a lot of those lads, they're in the dream mindset. They've dreamt of being a footballer till the age of 19, and now that dream's gone. And that's where I think the negativity sets in and go, oh, fuck it, I'm going to take any job. My life is over. So just to switch the dream, just to keep the dream, you know what? There is a possibility of someday working with a professional team. Just to give them until they reach the maturity level that they can go, all right, well, do you know what? Maybe that whole team thing isn't going to work. But maybe I can do what Ciaran did. Ciaran went and done this and went down the kind of cancer research way, and then went into lecturing or teaching or working in the college. Maybe I can do that when they reach the maturity level to do that. But just to give them while they're young, give them a dream, like give them something they can aim for. Like,
yeah, and I think to your point, it's very hard when you've lived that life of like blinders on, I want to be a pro footballer, to think that you could find anything that you love as much as football. You know what I mean? It's like
there's nothing to you.
Yeah, it's life. Like I haven't tried anything else or whatever. And to your point, like there's a lad, Connor Shields, who I played football with. He's from Malahide, and we kind of lost touch over the years. But he's now a physio for Rovers, and he's a physio for Ireland. And he just kind of again went off in his own direction. Was a good footballer. Went through college, tipped away, and did his physio degree, and now he's doing what he loves with some of the best athletes in the country. Yeah, like that's stuff that I just love seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you still feel part of it. Then you still feel part of it. You know what I mean? Although maybe you didn't make it, maybe you weren't good enough, maybe you weren't fit enough, maybe you didn't have the desire, but you still feel part of it. You know what I mean? I'm doing something here. I'm meeting these guys. I'm part of the team. Like, you know what I mean?
It also makes it a lot easier to accept that you weren't good enough.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Like, I still had delusions up until I was at Columbus Crew of like, no, I couldn't make it. I was injured, and then this coach didn't like me, and then I saw lads play, and I'm like, oh, I was terrible at football.
So I need to pee, right? So I'm going to run off, but I'm going to ask you to start this. Glenn can tune in and ask any questions if he wants. How does it go from you were down the sports road, the sports was your main interest, and then that switch to go, okay, this is what I want to do. Maybe the cancer research way, the lecture way. Obviously, your mom played a big part in that. But was it hard to make that switch? Was it just a quick decision? Was it did a lecturer go, this is a possibility here? You know, where did that all start?
A combination of all of the above. And if you ask it if it's hard, like I came to the University of South Carolina last year, and you get toured around the facilities or whatever, and we have our own clinic for exercise science stuff. But then during my tour, I saw the football team's strength and conditioning facilities, and I walked in there and I was like, I'd love to do this again. Like their facilities are outrageous. My own journey into that kind of started with understanding or learning about the changes that the body has through different types of treatments. So depending on the type of cancer you get and the stage of cancer you get, you'll get surgery, you might get chemotherapy, you might get radiation and hormonal therapy. And the type and the dose and the sequence of all those treatments together can cause a boatload of physiological changes. And particularly in terms of body composition and in losing muscle, putting on fat, losing muscular strength, even at a cellular level, different signals in the muscle are changing, mitochondria is being deteriorated. So all these things that the treatments are really effective for treating the disease, but a lot of people going through treatment are left with these really long-lasting impairments that are with them, that once their hair grows back, everyone's like, grand, you're finished your cancer, and they're stuck with all these side effects that have been with them. So to me, if you look at all those changes that happen with treatment in terms of I've lost muscle, put on fat, my bone mineral density is gone, like my bones are getting weaker and more brittle, losing strength, fatigue, cardiovascular damage, the structure and function of the heart is becoming damaged. All those things are negative side effects of treatment. They mirror the positive effects we'd anticipate with exercise. So it's a no-brainer putting them together. And when I started to put them together, it was such a fulfilling career because there's not a lot of resources for these people. So what we do as a field is we look at what type of cancer you've had, what stage you're having, what your course of treatment is, and then we look at what we anticipate as side effects, and then we manipulate exercise and nutrition to try and target those. So not all chemotherapy is the same. You get different agents of chemotherapy and you get different combinations of those chemotherapies. So some can cause structure or damage to the structure and function of the heart, where we might say, right, if you receive doxorubicin, we want cardiovascular exercise. Other treatments, say hormonal therapy for prostate cancer. Testosterone is a really key driver of prostate cancer growth. So one of the main treatments is we're either going to block the production of, or we're going to stop the action of testosterone in the body to stop the growth of cancer. Now, if you take testosterone out of a male, you're castrating them. So automatically you start to see really profound losses in muscle, accumulating or increase in fat mass, changes the bone and physical function. So inherently resistance training will be to go there and maybe throw in, you know, some education around nutrition and protein intake and all the rest of it. So when you look at like big picture, I'm doing exactly what I always wanted to do in manipulating exercise and nutrition to optimize performance or whatever. Like Air Lab's motto is that we're redefining human performance, because when people think of human performance, they think of athletes. And for me, when I looked at the impact I could have in my career, there are some unbelievable sports science and strength and conditioning coaches, and they are making such a great impact in that world. There's very few people taking that type of knowledge and applying it in clinical settings. So a lot of times in clinical settings like COPD, diabetes, cancer, the people in those settings as coaches are really afraid of touching people with those conditions. Like, oh, they're getting chemo, we gotta be careful, you know, you don't want to hurt them. And it's like, yo, they're getting toxic drugs flushed through their body for 4 hours. Doing a few squats isn't going to hurt them. You know what I mean? Like, so what the big draw was, I could see the impact of me taking my knowledge and experience in the strength and conditioning world and applying it in a clinical setting. In addition to, if I could produce research that becomes recognized internationally, I'm not just influencing my clinic. People are going to look at that and go, yeah, Fairman's research protocol has showed these effects, that's implemented in Paris, France, or whatever. So I looked at the impact I could have both within my community locally and then globally through my research. And it was just like, it's money, man. Like it's so much fun and it's so rewarding, because when you go through treatment, a lot of people will have these teams around them that say, you've got your medical oncologist, you've got your surgeon, you've got your radiation oncologist, all these people who's like, we're going to help you. And then when they finish the treatment, they ring a bell and they say, good luck, have a good life. And then these people are left with all these things that have happened to their body with no resources of how to help them.
Yeah, all the side
on
effects.
Top of that, yeah. And on top of that, you probably experience yourself. Like you look at like older adults, they're not really exercised to begin with. A lot of them would be wary of doing any sort of resistance training. So Air Lab's main focus is resistance training. So I get to teach. We have a person coming in next week, 86 years old, and we're teaching them how to deadlift. Like it's when you look at that stuff, one of the main reasons that people ended up in assisted living or nursing homes or whatever is because they don't have independence in their home. They can't carry their shopping in out of the car. They can't walk up and down the stairs with their washing. A cat runs out in front of them, and if they step wrong, they're going to fall. All these things are related to strength and mobility and physical function.
Yeah, or even having the ability to be able to stand up or go to the toilet. Like, do you know what I mean? That's why a lot of people get home care in Ireland is really popular over the last 10 years. People are coming, and my girlfriend used to do it. And a lot of the time what they're doing is basically just going there to be able to change a guy into his pajamas and let him go to the toilet before he goes, or let a woman go to the toilet before she goes to bed. If they had developed muscle in their later years, they would be able to stand up. Like that's why it's funny, like, you know, the fitness industry always seems to be about aesthetics, but people don't really think about, you know, I'm hitting 50 now. I want to be able to have some sort of quality of life when I'm that age. And then even more to your specific field, when you do go through something like cancer and your body has become even weaker, obviously it makes sense to build that back up. Like,
yeah. And that in itself is one of the most powerful parts of doing this, because you take someone that you've never met before who has accepted the idea that they're going to be home ridden for indefinite. And then we work with them over 8, 10, 12, 16 weeks, and they lose their walkers, or they're able to increase their gait speed. It's some of the most powerful things you could ever see. On top of all the things that I talked about before, like a lot of these people would be living at home, maybe have minimal resources, don't have a lot of support in their life, and they've gone through this on their own, and they come to us. A lot of the things in their life are just shit appointments of like worrying about if the cancer is going to come back or progress on how the cancer is going. And we can be one of the only positive sources in their life. Like it's I get as much out of it as they do in terms of you're teaching people how to do all that stuff. And to your point, I do have the same perspective on Instagram in particular. I think there's not enough. Everyone wants to train young, fit people, and it's cool. You can definitely teach a lot of people a lot of things. But I think if there was a group of people that started to focus on their parents and develop habits for them to be able to live better for longer, like it's so rewarding.
You just mentioned that building habits for our parents. You know what? The only thing that older people have at their disposal, Weight Watchers, Slimming World. That's all you ever see them go to. They're not out there learning how to, squat or things that are actually going to benefit them for the rest of their lives. It's like once you go past the age of 40, 50, your only option now is Weight Watchers. You've put on all this weight. You're realizing this weight is going to affect me in my later years, or a doctor has told you to lose the weight for your blood pressure case or whatever the case may be. And your only option now is Weight Watchers or Slimming World, which probably builds a bad mentality around food. So you're basically screwed. We done the first podcast we did was with a girl, Susan Niebergale. And she, when she retired, started she was a teacher and what do you call them, kind of a guidance teacher as well in the school then for like 25 years, career guidance. And then she, when she was coming up to retirement age, started training other people that were in the school coming near their retirement and stuff like that. But now she coaches younger people. And I was asking her the question, I was like, is there anything actually out there for training older people? I've never seen this on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. In the community, I haven't seen anybody go 50, 60, 70-year-olds who's going to help them with some sort of exercise. It seems like that's what you're doing. Like how far do you think that is away from hitting the general public?
I think it's our research. We try to build a body of evidence that will eventually become a part of national guidelines. So national guidelines or international guidelines exist for people with cancer. So we've got American College of Sports Medicine and we've got Sports Science Australia, both of whom have guidelines out to say, if you've got this type of cancer, here's how you should train. But the guidelines are just like a piece of paper on the internet. So irrespective of how far we go to develop guidelines, it still has to be individual facilities and owners who take responsibility and work in their community. So all I would do is you say, listen, Ciaran, I want to develop a cancer rehab program. How do I do it? I'll use my experience to go, right, we're going to have to talk to some local oncologists or maybe some GPs and talk about who they have access to, develop a referral system, develop the structure of your program and help guide you through that process. Or if it's just older adults, man, imagine how many local lads in Cabarrick would love to play masters level football, where you put the word out around your community and say, we're going to do strength and conditioning for football for masters lads. And then one day a week, you get a five-a-side with old lads. And then this other day a week, you're training them in your gym. I'm not doing anything different that you do if you're training young people. I'm just taking into consideration different people. With aging, you might have some jammy knees and some jammy shoulders. You might have some medication you might need to be worried about, or diabetes, or some other things that you need to be mindful of exercising around. But the structure of my program, I don't think would look too much different than the structure of your program. We still just go through movement patterns, trying to restore physical function, overall quality of life. Those things would look the exact same. I think it's to your point, giving you the support and confidence that there's absolutely nothing stopping you from doing it next week.
Yeah, it's actually a brilliant idea. Something like that, like we're talking about this whole podcast, men are interested in sport. And I always said, like, lads tend to lose their physique. Everyone always goes, oh, you put on weight as you age, and you're fucking older lads in your family go, uncles and parents and whatever go, you put on weight as you age. I'm like, well, did you stop playing football when you were 28 and you didn't exercise and you fucking had money now and you got takeaways every week? Like, you know what I mean? Your lifestyle changed, and that's why you put on the weight. If you could get people that are, maybe 35, 40, 45-year-old lads from the community to go out and football is the driver. I'm going to get to play football on a Saturday, be able to laugh with the lads, but we're also getting a little bit of training in here that's going to give them a better quality of life over the next 10, 15, 30, 40 years or whatever the case may be. That could be something that could actually really work for people. Like,
yeah, there was a group over in Denmark that did a research study with men with prostate cancer, and it was nationally funded. So the government got behind them and said, we're going to develop a national football league for prostate cancer. And basically all over Denmark, they started local teams of a load of men who are going through this thing. And one of the most important parts about that is, one of the challenges for us as young lads talking to older adults is relating to them in the sense of what they might be going through. So if you've got prostate cancer, it's not just losing physical function. It's not just strength. There's body image issues. A lot of people might have surgery to clip the nerve by the penis. So there's sexual function issues. And in the States, what we do is like, we'll get everyone together and do some sort of group counseling. We'll talk about all that stuff. That's not going to work in Ireland. So in Ireland, you might have a cup of tea after, and you know, two lads might go over for a chat and go, you know what, I'm experiencing this too. And all of that collectively is a really powerful experience for them. Like I said, it's different from me going, come on, Derek, you should try do this. And he's like, I've had a bum shoulder for 20 years. Like, you're not going to tell me to do an overhead press.
Yeah.
Whereas if they're together, they talk about their collective challenges, and that peer-to-peer support is really powerful. But there's absolutely initiatives that you could do locally that you just start on focusing on your local area and then build it out from there. And I think there's a lot of different like community service grants and different support mechanisms that you could use to support your efforts as well. But I would assume that, especially like, go down to Baldoyle and get all the alphas involved with the club and get them together. Like, there's no way you couldn't find at least a five-a-side, you know what I mean?
Yeah, easy. Fucking we can find 5 lads from Cabarrick and 5 lads from Baldoyle, or 10 lads from Cabarrick. You'll find,
start the scraps back up.
Yeah, you'll find people that will want to do that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny because they get lost in their careers and just doing that like factory life that we were talking about, or trades, or whatever the case may be, and they forget that, you know, there's probably an hour here. I'm probably even for their mental health. You know, you go home, you're sitting there with your mom and your kids when you're 45, and there's just maybe little arguments here and there, and you're not as happy as you used to be. To get out with a group of lads for your mental health will be a fucking massive boost. Like,
well, that's the, like, you look at that and go, why is the mental health not great in 30s, 40s, and 50s? Is, as lads, we grew up glued to each other all day, every day. Summers all day, every day. After school all day, every day. And then you go through college, you go off tipping away in your work, and then lads give up football for a couple of years, and then you might see each other every 4, 5, 6 months. Like, some of the lads, when I come home and visit, they're like, we haven't seen each other since the last time you're back. It's like,
yeah.
So you lose that support. And like you said, especially for lads who don't necessarily, I don't need to talk about it, I just want to go and play football, and that helps me get rid of some of my demons.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, and then you forget that that's what it was, like, as a man in your 30s and 40s, you've got no support. So giving them back is massive.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we could look into here. From your point of view, from the actual, your aim is to work with hospitals and stuff like that, or you know, doctors or oncologists or whatever the case may be. How like kind of big has that become in America, the exercise part? Like, would it be in general hospitals, or would it be just where you're working and where you're specifically kind of spreading the word, or is it everywhere? Like, what's going on?
It's both. So as far as exercise physiology in hospitals, a lot of it has been tailored to cardiac rehab. So cardiac rehab is probably about 30 years ahead of where we are in the oncology world, where we now have an understanding that if you've had some sort of cardiac event, the best thing you can do is to try and train the heart to recover from it, as opposed to what we used to say is bed rest. The same principles apply for exercise and cancer, where we know you're about to, especially if you've been diagnosed, we know you're about to go through these treatments that are going to impact you. The best thing we can do is start as early as possible to try and buffer some of those side effects, and at minimum maintain you where you're at, if not get you a little bit better. So there's definitely increasing awareness of it. And in the more, not progressive, in the more advanced cities, in the sense of like New York City, LA, these type of big metropolitan cities where they have a lot of resources, and the facilities or the institutions there would probably be more progressive in doing the research. those places will have well-resourced environments for it. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, where the town is like 200,000 people. It's a private hospital. There's not really any research incentive. So their support or idea about exercise and cancer is not there. So I came in October, and I have to walk into all these different meetings with oncologists and the CEO of the hospital and all this type of stuff, and make the case for the rationale for it, but also from their perspective, the cost effectiveness of it. So unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of room at the table until I had a PhD, in the sense of like, if I'm just Joe Blogs emailing them, they're like, who is this cowboy? Whereas if I'm Professor Fairman from the University of South Carolina and here's all my research, they do take a little bit more notice. But even then, like, I've been here a year now, and 2 weeks ago we opened up our clinic, because that's how long it takes to form those relationships and develop the infrastructure that will support something like that. And that comes back to what I was saying about the guidelines. The guidelines will exist, but that's separate to, on the individual institution or community level, someone has to be driving those initiatives to give these people a voice and try and develop a program for them.
From a physical standpoint, this is like what I always say to people. They go to a physio and they get handed a sheet of paper and they go off and they don't do it. If you don't do it, it's never going to be done. It's even worse if you're going through cancer and you have to go and look up, probably, you know, maybe you're given a sheet along with everything else, or you have to go and look it up to find out what kind of exercises you should be doing for your cancer. It's 100% the last thing on their mind. So someone needs to put it on their mind and let them know that this is going to help you and benefit you and make you feel better. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And on top of that, we all are gym goers. So we identify as like fitness people. These people have never trained before in their life. So exercise isn't even in their mind. Like, exercise, what are you talking about? And then all their family is going, listen, you've had a rough day of chemo, you should relax. So the opposite is happening, where they're getting all these signals to not exercise.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about this idea of, should the services be opt-in or opt-out? And what we're seeing is the best case scenario is that you have the option to not do it, but doing it is the first option, in the sense of like, right, you're meeting with your med onc, you're meeting with your rad onc, now you're meeting with an exercise physiology person, and we're going to do this. And you have to tell me that you don't want it, as opposed to you having to find the resources to do it.
Yeah. So just in terms of what your lab or your where they go to do the exercise, where are you and what do you do? So like, if someone's going through cancer treatment right now, is it a case of you're in the hospital, you have your own room, or you have your own base there, or are you outside and people are told, look, here's an address, you have to go here? What exactly happens between the process of someone going through the chemo, learning all that stuff, and then going to you?
All the above.
Yes.
So we have a clinic that's located in the hospital that we work with, their physical therapy clinic. So it's a really great pathway of their fitness. So if you have breast cancer, for example, you'll have a lot of impairments in upper body overhead range of motion. So you work with a PT, fix that, and then they give them straight to us in the same facility. We just take over and work with them. We also recognize that we are located in the city, and it's a bit of a hassle to get there. So that is a barrier to people who live northeast, southwest of the city of getting in and out. Like, imagine if you're in Dublin city centre and you're asking someone from Howth to come all the way out there. Like, it's not going to work. So we also have developed collaborations with different clinics around the city to say, if we can come up with an agreement, can we train your people here or train our people here? So then if you do live in Howth, well, we've got a place in Rush that you can go to.
Yeah.
So we try to find pockets of the city that would be amenable to an area that's populated in there.
How many people is part of your team then? Like, do you have a big team that's going around doing this, or what way does it work? Or do you, how hands-on are you, because you're doing the college thing as well? Like, how does it actually work?
I'm hands-on. So the team will consistently grow. So when I first got here, it was just me going to all these meetings and setting up the infrastructure. Now I have a team of about 25. So I've got a PhD student, a master's student, some admin folks, and then a boatload of other people involved that are training individuals. So we just pick and choose who's going where. The other thing that we do is also in recognition of the final piece, which is a lot of people are either don't have the accessibility or resources to get to somewhere. They don't have a car. They might not have enough income to take time off of work, all the rest of it. So we also have a hybrid delivery approach where if they're within a sufficient radius of us, we'll go to their house and set up an equipment station with them, work with them for a few weeks to develop their patterns and give them the movements. And then we'll come back and deliver the intervention over Zoom. And then we'll go out every few weeks and make sure they're doing well and progress them if we need. So one of the best things about my exposure in this field, especially because it kind of starts to parallel with public health, is more if you are rich and white and you're a retired professor and you live close to campus, you can get a lot of benefit from what we do. But that doesn't help the people who need it most, who are living out in rural settings or who aren't close to the university. So we've tried to develop resources that are suitable for all people across it. But to your point, it takes a lot of power or resources to be able to do that. So
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's what I was asking. It's a tough job. Like, it wouldn't be easy. Like, obviously you have people might think you just do the exercise side, but to organize everything that you do, I'd imagine it's very intense and very hands-on and stressful at times too.
And also, I'm sure you can respect this from a leadership perspective. Like, you're consistently worrying about the culture and the personnel you have on board and how you manage conflict with everyone and all the rest of it. And especially, like, some of the people we have on board would be students who are doing practicum or internships as part of their college experience. So you're training them to be proficient as well while you're doing the intervention. So you have to find a balance between giving them opportunities to learn and grow while also maintain the standards of the program. But to pivot back to your perspective, like, I think there could be a really valuable way that you could bring on resources without additional expenditure. In maybe you do reach out to a DIT or a DULIG and say, we're developing this program for older men. It's going to be a mix of football and strength and conditioning. Do you have any students who are looking for work experience or internship experience? And they'll have a boatload. So then you get your little crew of 5 or 6 kids who are studying sports science, who will be really passionate about delivering a high quality program. And that's your team there. Yeah. That you wouldn't necessarily need to build out this massive infrastructure either.
It's very interesting, because it's something that I've never thought about. And like I said earlier, there's things going on in the fitness industry that baffle me and piss me off and have me less popular right now, because I don't agree with the things and they're the popular things right now. And I sometimes wonder, like, I want to help people. I got in this to help people, and people right now don't want my help, and they might not for a year until they realize what's going on is not right. It might take a year or 2 years for them to realize that in that time I could be helping other people. Yeah, you know what I mean? We could be helping instead of, like, I was nearly in the last, this has been going on for a year already. And in the last year, I've been going, I don't give a shit, because I know, these people might be working with certain coaches. They're going to do that for a year. I'll have my regular clients, and all these people will come flooding to me when they realize that what they're doing right now is bullshit. But, and I've been just kind of going, fuck it, I'm just going to wait for that, where I could be working on something like this. You know what I mean? It's not until you have conversations with you and other people and realize, there's actually other things I could be doing right now. Instead of going fuck them and giving the middle finger again, being the kind of the child in me, I could actually take my energy and use it somewhere else and grow something else that's going to help other people of a different age bracket that aren't in that Instagram world,
Yeah. And like I said, I think there's a lot of ways that you could creatively make it a sustainable program. You know what I mean? Like, the first time you run it, you're just testing the feasibility. You're piloting the whole infrastructure and how it runs and how people get into the program. But once you have that developed, like, if you're telling me that you can't get lads to pay a $5 for a five-a-side program, like, there's a ways that you can develop it that it would be sustainable for you. In addition to, I know they exist in Ireland, I'm just more familiar with the American ones, but like local community service grants, like you would pitch this to, I don't know, like Fingal County Council and say, we're looking to develop this. It will cost us $3,000. Here's what we're going to use the $3,000 for: buying footballs, cones, giving a few extra things, t-shirts for the lads or whatever. And that is the initiative. And then if you go back and say, even if you do a test them on strength, fitness, whatever, before and after the program, and even do some interviews of their experience, you then take those and go back to Dublin City Council, County Council, and go, this is what we've done. And we've developed this resource and program for people. And it's having a real tangible effect on people's physical and mental health that isn't happening right now in the fitness industry. Like you've just got something powerful there, you know?
Yeah, it's an amazing idea and something that I never would have thought about until we had this conversation. And it's all things that I'm interested in. You know what I mean? It's health, it's fitness, it's football, it's mental health. It's like something that I love, everything that I love thrown into one mix, but it just never came across my brain until we had this conversation with you. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think to your point, like I do, man. Like I go on. I used to try and be big on Instagram, and for my own mental health, there's I can't remember what the law is, but it basically speaks to the amount of effort you have to take to refute bullshit is at minimum twice the amount it takes for them to create the bullshit. So if you're trying to counter some health and fitness claim that you know is off the wall, you have to get over that noise and then try extra hard to convince people that not the right way, but that here's another alternative. Yeah. And it's just so much effort. The biggest challenge in Ireland is that there's no standardization. Like whatever about us, we have the American College of Sports Medicine, and it's not perfect, and you still do see some people leak through, but we at least have minimum standards that you have to hit to be certified as a personal trainer. Ireland take a weekend course, or if that, and just now I can go take pictures and put them on Instagram on an online coach or whatever. I haven't trained anyone in person. And I think it's a really damaging thing to the people who care. A lot of people treat personal training as a part-time gig, or it's a side hustle, whatever. And it devalues the field as a whole, because now when you go to older adults and go, listen, I think we can do something, they're going, well, I don't want to do all that. I don't want to have me top off. I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, they don't want to go to a gym where people are naked working out. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of things that we have to do to try and raise our standards. And I think for someone like you who experiences that frustration, it's because you care about the standard of the field, and you're frustrated because other people don't hold themselves to the same standard. And you're just going, is no one going to talk about this? Like, I'll say it.
Like we said earlier, when we're talking about our mates, when we're saying it to our mates and we're giving them the advice that they don't want to hear, and it doesn't work sometimes, I'm giving that advice to the masses and they don't want to hear it. So now I'm the biggest prick. You know what I mean? Now I'm that guy that everybody hates, not just your mate having a bit of an argument with you. Like, you know, everyone's looking going, I'm not listening to this cunt anymore. I want to get a fucking six pack. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think something that I'd like to touch on with you, because I've asked everybody this that's come on nearly so far. We interviewed Susan, who was into the kind of fitness stuff and fat loss, and the dietitian so far. And I asked both of them, you have 100% seen the negative effects that your body can have on your mental health going through the bulimia thing, right? The issue here is what I'm not liking, and what's going on is it's become extremely popular for people, average people, to do like extreme fitness photo shoots. So you're taking average people and getting them to bodybuilding standard physiques just for a picture for Instagram, right? So my issue with it is, like when you're fresh out of college, when you've done your personal training course, that's 4 weeks. What gives you the experience to push someone to that low body fat, to that mental struggle, and know that they're not going to develop anorexia or bulimia? Or if you do it with 500 people, one of those 500 go to that state, and how fucking hard it's going to be for them to get out of that. Have you potentially ruined someone's life there? Have you potentially drove someone to suicide? Have you ruined a family's life? Why the fuck are you risking that? Why is anyone doing it? So from your point of view, to go, you had those views with your body. What do you think? Like, what would your advice be to anyone that's going, I'm going to tell myself I need to get to, as a male, 4 to 6% body fat, or as a female, maybe 14 to 16, just for a picture? I'm going to take that risk just for a picture for Instagram.
I don't think people think about what they're doing. Like I genuinely think a lot of personal trainers, or people who want to be personal trainers, go into a course with the right intentions of, I want to help people. All they've seen is, this is how I help people. And they assume that if I got here through excessive workouts and being really strict in my diet, that's the approach for other people. And I don't think, like, man, personal training should be like an apprenticeship. Honestly, like, if you can take a 16, 17-year-old and give them a certificate that gives them free reign to manipulate someone's exercise and nutrition, like I've got a PhD in exercise physiology. I'm petrified of working with someone from a nutrition perspective, because the more I've gone on, it's not just fix your protein, lower your carbs and all the rest. It's like a lot of people are bringing all that other aspects that you spoke about into their culture of nutrition, into their own relationship with food and their family environment in terms of socioeconomic status and all the rest of it. It's not just chicken and broccoli. And I think I saw something from you a while ago that said, like, we've gone through this cycle of it was chicken and broccoli, then it was IFIM, and now it's back to super strict.
Yeah. Like we got lost again. I thought we were healed. I thought we were moving forward. And now I'm like, whoa, we took 10 steps back.
We don't do enough job. We don't do a good enough job of teaching people the morality and ethics of what we do beyond here's how you get someone fit. Like there are dire and serious consequences for what you might be doing from a well-intentioned perspective to someone else's mental health. And like one of the things that shocks me is like you look at the average personal trainer in Ireland who got a local certification. There's no intake, there's no medical history, there's no background on medications, there's no indication of mental health. So they don't even know who they're working with. They don't know if anyone's at risk for any of these. To then go, okay, it's clear that this person has potentially some risk of mental health. We need to refer out or develop other strategies that aren't as excessive. So what we teach our folks is I think it's hard in Dublin because there's so much competition. And that competition drives, well, if the only thing that people care about is body composition, I'm going to put up all these pictures. And they think that's how, you know what I mean? So we, at the risk of your career, develop an appropriate referral pathway. So you as a personal trainer should not be doing nutrition. You're not a life coach. You're not a mental health professional. But you can absolutely develop bi-directional relationships with those people. So if you have a registered dietitian in Dublin that you know and your good colleagues, you can refer your people to them and vice versa. You can refer someone to a mental health counselor and vice versa. The desire to be all these things for one person is just, it's an insult to the other people who are in those professions.
Yeah, I actually done a few posts there when this was really bothering me. I done a few posts about it, and in every single post wrote, if you're in that point, if you feel like the only way you're valued as a person is to hit 4% body fat, maybe you need to speak to a mental health professional, because that's not the way you should be looking at yourself. And someone actually wrote to me and said, "Why are you harping on about this shit? You're not a fucking mental health professional. Stick to what you're doing." I was like, I'm literally advising people to go to speak to a mental health professional.
Oh, the irony.
Like, what is wrong with these people? But that's what you're dealing with here. And it scares me because, like, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I had this conversation with the dietitian guy, Glenn, when I heard the numbers of people that checked into mental health facilities last year in Ireland compared to the year before with anorexia, bulimia, had literally tripled. So in the year of 2020, when I can see this, I seen this coming from day one. I went, these coaches that are popular are pushing this fucking narrative. That can drive, if that drives one person to anorexia or bulimia, they're ruining someone's life or ruining a period of their life. And I seen it coming, and now it's there in the numbers. Now we can see 2020, the numbers of people that checked in tripled. Do you know what I mean? It went from 64 to fucking 190 odd. Do you know what I mean? That's mental.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I'll say back to you in also with your frustration, I think all you can do is keep doing what you're doing, in the sense of, like, from my perspective, when people hear I do exercise and cancer versus when I used to do sports science and strength and conditioning with Columbus Crew, a lot more people wanted to know from me when I was doing the sport, because they were like, this dude knows loads, like sports is cool. Whereas the exercise and cancer stuff, no one really cares about. So I face similar things of like, I know what I'm doing is really beneficial. I don't care about the volume of people that pay attention, because the few people that do need to find me will find me and I can help them. So you being a strong advocate for body image disorders, eating disorders and all the rest of it, you are absolutely going to put people off. But there are going to be people who are scrolling through Instagram who find that and go, holy shit, no one's talking about this, and Lee is. So it's, for me, it was for me anyway, worth losing the popularity because the impact I could have for the few was much more.
Yeah, that's
You know
exactly
what I mean?
what it would be. Like, from my point of view, I would rather help someone be part of a team that helps someone improve their mental and physical health and have a better life and feel happy in themselves than just get someone down to 4% fucking body fat for a picture. Like, do you know what I mean? That makes more value to me. For you, maybe that made more value. You were like, I love football. I love being part of this team. I can help guys get in shape. I can help guys perform better. But also, do you know what I can do? My mom went through this, or a family member went through this, and loads of people we know go through cancer. And I want to help those people. That's more value to me as a person. Like,
yeah, and I think to your point, you will have a lot more credibility with the right professionals too. So if you were to reach out to an RD or a mental health professional, and you're saying, here are the things that I'm seeing, they would be much more amenable to developing a relationship with you than someone who does advocate for 4% body fat. But then the other thing could be true where, like, you could link up with Baldoyle Football Club or whoever and go, I'm going to do your lads S&C program in the summer or whatever. And you're teaching young lads who are anywhere from 17 to 25 plus that there's a difference between training for body composition and training for performance. So lads think that if they eat like shit, if they eat very few calories and overwork themselves, they'll be in great nick. And because they're in great nick, they'll be good at performance. But you know that that's not the case. I'd rather have you at 10, 12% body fat and have a high VO2, high lactate threshold, good power capacity, and actually be good for your sport. But lads they're not getting that information. They're just going,
there's a complete lack of understanding. That's the same thing with the whole fitness, photo shoots, sports, whatever the case may be. There's a massive lack of understanding. It's only when we look back in our own lives that we go, whoa, man, I was doing putting cayenne pepper and lemon juice in hot water because I thought it'd make me lose weight when I was 18. You know what I mean? So when I look back, I'm like, whoa, man, I thought that was real. There's people out there today that still think that shit's real, or still think worse stuff is benefiting them.
Well, that's the scariest thing to me. There's a dark and seedy side to the fitness industry in Ireland and England that we don't necessarily have here to the same extent. Like, you look at a lot of people who get drawn in here, and the personal training is a guise for steroids. The personal training is a guise for other things that they're running under the table. And you have people who are unaware that this exists and they're leaning towards steroids. Like, you haven't even started training to a point where you can mature your own body yet, and you're considering injecting yourself or taking whatever. It's at 18, 19, it's insane. And that, to me, in Dublin at least, from the people that I'm connected with, is rampant. And I that's the thing that is scariest to me. Coming back to your point, why would anyone go into a gym if they're seeing that stuff? Why would anyone go, yeah, I want to involve in fitness, when I see my personal trainer down the local boozer doing all sorts on a Saturday night? You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
It's a tough world to live in, man. It's a tough world.
Yeah. I think you have it hard as a businessman. Like, I always say over here, it's so much easier to change people's lifestyle. Like, all we have to worry about is nutrition for the most part. You have to worry about nutrition, them worrying about people's alcohol intake, and then asking them what else they're doing that's going to be progress. Like, that's a lot to try and worry about, you know?
It is. It fucking is, yeah. And then I always think, like, that the people here have that method of running away with the alcohol and the drugs and stuff like that. And in my opinion, the 6-pack is just another way of running away. It's just, I don't feel good about myself, I'm going to do that. And I'm emotionally aware of the dangers. I'm like, I don't see a point. I don't see why you would drive that, or why you would tell yourself you're only acceptable at that. I've had loads of people that be in the gym and they're like, oh, I just need to lose a little bit more. And I'll be like, no, you don't. Why? And just keep asking them why. And they go, seen on Instagram, this person done that, or I stood on this thing that told me that I should be this amount of kilos for my height or my age or whatever. And you're like, hold on, that's not the case. And people that are in my environment and in my gym will latch on and go, oh, now I get you. They trust my knowledge to go, I know what you mean. I know that's not going to help me. I know that's not going to benefit me. But the ones who aren't under my umbrella, those are the ones that are suffering. And those are the ones that I want to help, and want coaches to want to help, rather than coaches just going, this is what we're going to do because everyone else is doing it and it's the popular thing and I'm going to make money. It's not.
Yeah.
I know, because I didn't get into this to make money. You know what I mean? Some people probably did, and that's where their driver comes from. That's where the issues start, I think.
Yeah. And you nailed it. That was exactly what it was for me, man. Like, to your point, a lot of people knew me as a lad who was in good nick growing up.
Yeah.
And then when I went over to America, like, I was petrified of coming back to Ireland not in good nick. So then I was like, right, well, if I'm not in good nick, no one will like me. And then it was like, right, 7% isn't enough. I have to get lower and lower and lower. And that's, you do start to spoil out control and tie in your self-worth to your appearance. But I think coming back to where you're at right now, like, what I would do would be like, what services exist in Dublin that are eating disorder related or body image related in terms of clinics or resources, and in your gym everywhere, you're just making those resources and infrastructures aware to people. So you just have things in your gym of like, yo, this is hard. Like, if you are experiencing any sort of these people will be willing to have a chat with you.
Yeah.
Or even bringing those people into your gym to have a conversation to all your members about these different things and the triggers and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's, to your point, where are you going to invest your energy? Are you going to fight the battle that's almost insurmountable? Or can you redirect that energy and go, fuck it, I'm going to do my thing and build out all these things that are positive and just let the rest be noise?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's so many other avenues I could be going down and spending my energy on, because I think it's wasted energy, and the energy loses. Then the energy becomes less, because I know when I first started fighting this fight and went, fuck this shit, like, why is everyone doing this? Why are coaches pushing people to do it? Why are people doing it? I was posting probably 3 times a day on it, and that was even before that. I posted 3 times a day every day for fucking 5 years on stuff that I was passionate about, and then became passionate about that, or trying to fight that fight. But then the passion was lost. The passion's still there in me, but it's fallen on deaf ears. So the passion to post becomes less.
Yeah.
So now I'm posting 3 times a week instead of 3 times a day. You know what I mean? Because I know it's fallen on deaf ears and they're not ready to hear it. Where I could be redirecting that energy to people that actually want the help.
Yeah. Glenn, were you going to chime in there?
I was going to say something that Lee touched on as well about like a couple of minutes ago about like some coaches that are, you know, trying to get their clients down to this certain percentage of weight, and those coaches are actually, you know, taking steroids, and they see their clients are literally just going to those coaches thinking that they have more specialty in their line of work because they're in good nick, but it's in reality they're I don't mean to label every coach that's in good nick as taking steroids, of course, that's ridiculous, but we know of a few who are, and then are training those clients to get into, you know, unrealistic goals, really, you know. And that's
they don't. Yeah, it's funny that they don't tell you they're doing it. There's a lot that don't tell you they're doing it. There's a couple that I respect because they openly say, I do steroids. This is why I look like this, or this is part of the reason why I look like this. And you have a lot of respect for them because you're like, at least they're giving people the information. At least they're telling them this is why I look like this. But the ones who aren't, the ones who are openly saying I don't do it when they do it, they're creating a whole different world of fucking mind fuck for people. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, Ciaran, I'm sure you have to get to work soon, so we'll try not to hold you up too long. I think every question that I had on that list was just thrown out the window because the conversation just flowed, man. There was information in there that I never knew that fucking has opened my eyes to things and about your story that I didn't realize. And I actually think this is the best thing ever to fall on our lap today, because this is exactly kind of related to the things that I'm trying to talk about or you know, make people understand. And you have experienced what I'm trying to get people not to experience. I don't want you to go down that road. You have come on here, showed them that you have suffered, that you've gone through things in mental and physical and educational, of all the processes that you had to go through to get to where you are today. So you are nearly like the shining light for people. This is what I can do. You know what I mean? I knew there were stories in your life that was what you were going to be. But today actually opened my eyes to even more, where people can realize no matter what point I'm at, or how low I am, or how fucking dumb I think I am, or how much of a fucking bad teenager I am, that there is hope for me to reach a fucking level of a respected career and help people and do what I want to do and do what I've always dreamed of doing. So thanks a million for coming on and sharing those things with us. We didn't even know that you had, or we didn't ask you to share. So thanks a lot for doing that and trying to help us and help others as well.
Oh, Ciaran, it was absolutely a pleasure, man. Absolutely. Like, it's just, I couldn't believe some of the things they were saying as well. And, you know, that's Lee, this is the reason why we said this. Stories like this, you know, and it's just incredible, really. You know, and I even say, like, you know, to the younger generation about like, school and stuff like that. I remember at one time my little brother was 16 or something, 15 in school, and he's not really, you know, the best in academic skills, just not for him, basically, yeah, like a lot of us. And I remember, the teacher said I was stupid because I didn't get the maths question, but I said, okay, well, what are you good at? And he's there playing Call of Duty, and he's naming all the guns, right? And the guns and the attachments and all. And I said, go into your teacher tomorrow, Logan, right? And ask him to name 4 guns, 4 weapons. And he went in and asked the teacher about Call of Duty questions. The teacher hadn't a clue. And I said, so, Logan, is your teacher stupid? And he just laughed. Like, it was just such a silly question for him. I made him understand it in his simplistic way. As I said, Logan, he's saying that because he's good at maths. You're great at naming all these things. And eventually, then when you get older, you fall on your purpose and your passion that only you are unique to. It doesn't mean anybody is particularly dumb or stupid. You know, it's your particular passion. And I just tried to simplify it in the best way I could. That, like, just because, you know, teachers don't know everything. He couldn't name 4 guns at Call of Duty. And I just kind of, it made sense to him in the best possible way, you know, so, yeah.
Well, I say it back to you, lads. Like, I you know, Lee, I know we go back. Like, I fully respect your voice in our community because it's much needed. And then a resource like this, like, I go back to all of us when we were growing up. There was no podcast where 3 men were sitting around talking about how they felt and their struggles with mental health and all the rest of it. So I fully support what you're doing and the stuff you're putting out there. So especially, Lee, as you go to figure out some of this stuff, I'm more than happy to keep chatting about how you develop this program and all the rest of it. Just fully in support of what you're doing. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm sure. You know what? We have to cut this short because I'm worried about you getting about your day and getting things done. But I feel like we could have talked for another 3 hours. So maybe down the line we'll get you on for another episode.
100%. Yeah. You're like the Irish stuff. Joe Rogan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A repeat. You'll be a repeat guest.
Yeah.
The next time you see us I'm gonna have that setting like what you have right now.
Go for it. Can't wait.
It's brilliant, man. You're an absolute legend. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Really.
All right, gents. Well, let me know how all this is going and when it goes out, and I'll repost and all the rest of it.
Will do, Ciaran. Thanks a lot.
Have a good day, bro. Take care.